with my friends, I would say, oh, well, as my mother would say, well, my mother would say, my mother would have said this. And then it made me realize that I should put these lessons down because it's really life lessons. They're really sort of sayings that you can use to understand your own life, have good self-reflection, and then get through challenges. So I said to my mother, let's write this book, but I wanted a lot of it to be in her voice and, her words. And so she did a lot of explaining, and I did a lot of typing.
I did a lot of talking about myself, when I was born, experiences I had growing up, because I've had a long and extremely interesting life. So it was easy for me to recount the way life was for me as a little girl, a teenager, as a young woman, as a mother. So it just flows. It's your life. You could talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So can we go back to when you were a kid? Because that just stands out with me. When you were born.
Yeah.
And you came home from the hospital and your sister had just been diagnosed with polio. So your mother handed you off and dealt with your sister, understandably.
But let me say in my mother's defense, my mother was the kind of woman who always said she drove herself to the hospital to have me. She did. My mother was one of those women who could do anything. And when she came home from the hospital with a new baby, she found out that her 4.5-year-old was crippled. She had been dancing in the aisles at a movie with her grandmother, and she collapsed. And in those days, this was a huge polio epidemic, and the outcome was usually pretty grim. They put these kids into braces, and they were crippled for life. But my mother, with an 8th grade education, somehow, I have no idea, had heard about the Kenny treatment, and she organized a bathtub brigade from all the members of our large family, and people came over and put her there in the bathtub, and she moved her little legs day and night. And the truth is, she had no bad effects of that polio in her long life in her 90s. So my mother was in her own way a heroine. And she had this little baby, and there was a big family, so she handed me off to my father's youngest sister, who was 17, my Aunt Ruth. And I must have been a good baby. I must have thrived and ate and slept and whatever. And they just handed me around, and I had lots of mothers. Ultimately, I came to see that there were lots of good people in the world when I look back on it. But I was handed around, not by my own mother and not by my own father, but by all these other good people. So that was a life lesson learned early in life. There are good people in this world who can take care of you if you thrive on your own.
Right. And it didn't, yeah. But later you said, and tell me if I'm getting this wrong, that your mother never bonded with you.
We never bonded with each other. There's a bonding period. You see that with ducklings. Are you my mother? They'll follow. That period, that crucial period, that early year, I did not bond with my mother because she wasn't mothering me. She was mothering her other child who was in dire need of a mother. So I bonded with my Aunt Ruth, as a matter of fact. She became my spiritual mother. But I mean, my mother was still my mother, in fact. Right. And I lived with her, and she took care of me the best she could. But this was an era, you understand, maybe you don't, when people were put on their own very early. My mother was the youngest of 6 girls. I'm sure she was put out to pasture early, do this, do that. So the independence came from, if you could do it, you did it. And my father was the oldest son of 6 children, and he too was put on his own early. So that was the tradition in my family. So the bonding couldn't happen because my mother wasn't physically taking care of me.
Right.